What if I told you the world's most powerful economy is standing on a financial time bomb? With over $35.85 trillion in debt, the question isn't if the US will face a debt crisis, it's when. And when that moment comes, it could shake the entire global economy to its core. Are we heading towards an economic doomsday, or can the US pull off a miracle? Stay with us as we uncover the harsh realities, hidden truths, and possible escape routes of America's debt crisis. How much more debt can the US pile on before declaring bankruptcy? The United States, long considered the world's economic powerhouse, faces an unprecedented debt crisis. With the national debt surpassing $35.85 trillion and growing rapidly, concerns about fiscal sustainability are becoming increasingly urgent. While the US dollar remains the global reserve currency and treasury bonds are still seen as safe haven assets, cracks in this financial foundation are beginning to show. This video explores the tipping point of US debt, examining key factors such as global geopolitical dynamics, economic policies, and international shifts in power, particularly from China, India, Russia, Ukraine, and the broader global economy. Understanding US debt dynamics. What is the national debt? The national debt is the total amount of money that the US government owes to creditors. It includes both public debt, which is owed to external investors like foreign governments and private institutions, and intragovernmental debt, which is borrowed from federal agencies such as Social Security. 2. Debt to GDP ratio and historical trends. The debt to GDP ratio measures the size of a country's debt in comparison to its economic output. Historically, this ratio has increased during times of crisis, such as wars and economic recessions. Today, the US debt to GDP ratio exceeds 120%, raising alarms about the country's ability to sustain its borrowing habits. 3. Role of the Federal Reserve in debt management. The Federal Reserve plays a key role by managing interest rates and buying government bonds. Lower interest rates make it cheaper for the government to borrow, but they also contribute to inflation. The Fed's balancing act is crucial to prevent economic instability. 4. Key drivers of US debt growth: military spending, social programs, and tax policies. High military spending, large social welfare programs like Medicare and Social Security, and tax cuts without corresponding spending reductions have been major drivers of debt growth. These factors continue to strain the federal budget. Can the US go bankrupt? 1. US bankruptcy is a myth. Sovereign currency issuance. The US government cannot technically go bankrupt because it can print its own currency, the US dollar. However, printing more money can lead to inflation, reducing the dollar's value and purchasing power. 2. Default versus devaluation. Real risks in US debt. While the US may not officially declare bankruptcy, it could default on its debt payments if political gridlock prevents raising the debt ceiling. Alternatively, the government might devalue the dollar to reduce debt burdens, but this would have serious economic consequences. 3. What history tells us. Lessons from other countries. Countries like Argentina and Greece have faced severe debt crises. While the US operates differently due to its reserve currency status, history shows that debt mismanagement can lead to economic collapse. Global shifts. China and India's economic strategies. China's de-dollarization strategy. China has been steadily reducing its reliance on the US dollar in trade deals and global transactions. By promoting the yuan as an alternative reserve currency, China aims to reduce its vulnerability to US economic sanctions. 2. India's growing economic independence and role in BRICS. India is emerging as an economic powerhouse and a key member of BRICS: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. India is also shifting towards alternative currencies in trade, reducing dependence on the US dollar. 3. How trade agreements are reducing dependency on the US dollar. Countries are increasingly signing trade agreements that bypass the US dollar, instead using local currencies or alternative financial systems. This shift weakens the dollar's global dominance. The Ukraine-Russia conflict and its ripple effects on US debt. US financial aid to Ukraine. How much can it afford? The US has sent billions of dollars in aid to Ukraine since the conflict began. While this support aligns with geopolitical strategies, it places additional pressure on US debt. 2. Russia's move away from dollar transactions. Russia has reduced its reliance on the dollar, focusing on trade in rubles and other currencies. This change limits the effectiveness of US sanctions. 3. Energy markets and sanctions. Impact on the US economy. Sanctions on Russian energy have disrupted global supply chains and increased energy prices, indirectly affecting the US economy and contributing to inflation. The role of BRICS in challenging US financial dominance. BRICS, de-dollarization efforts. BRICS nations are actively reducing the dependence on the dollar by trading in local currencies and creating alternative financial systems. 2. Impact of a potential BRICS reserve currency. A BRICS reserve currency could reduce demand for the US dollar, making it harder for the US to borrow at favorable rates. 3. How these moves threaten US borrowing capacity. If global demand for the dollar declines, the US may face higher borrowing costs and reduced investor confidence. The world economy and US debt vulnerabilities. Global confidence in the US dollar. The dollar's status as the global reserve currency depends on international confidence in US financial stability. Growing debt threatens this confidence. 2. Foreign holders of US debt. China, Japan, and beyond. Countries like China and Japan hold significant portions of US debt. If they reduce their holdings, it could trigger financial instability. 3. A potential global economic recession and its impact. A global recession would strain economies worldwide, including the US, making debt repayment even more challenging. Domestic factors impacting US debt sustainability. Political gridlock and debt ceiling debates. Frequent political deadlocks over raising the debt ceiling create recurring financial crises. Political parties often use the debt ceiling as leverage, delaying critical decisions and causing market volatility. Failure to address the debt ceiling in a timely manner threatens the nation's creditworthiness and can trigger global financial instability. 2. Rising interest rates and debt servicing costs. As the Federal Reserve raises interest rates to combat inflation, the cost of servicing national debt increases significantly. Higher interest payments consume a larger portion of the federal budget, leaving less room for essential services like healthcare, education, and infrastructure investments. 3. The social and economic consequences of austerity measures. Efforts to reduce debt through austerity measures, such as cutting public spending or raising taxes, often have severe social consequences. Reduced funding for social welfare programs and public services can lead to increased poverty, unemployment, and social unrest, further weakening economic stability. 4. Aging population and entitlement spending. The US faces significant financial strain from an aging population that relies on Social Security and Medicare. As the proportion of retirees grows, entitlement program expenses rise, adding to the debt burden. 5. Economic inequality and tax revenue challenges. Income inequality affects tax revenue collection, as wealthier individuals and corporations often exploit tax loopholes. Addressing these inefficiencies is critical to ensuring sustainable revenue generation. These domestic factors collectively influence the US's ability to manage its debt and respond to economic shocks effectively. Possible scenarios for the US debt crisis. Scenario 1. Gradual fiscal reform and debt stabilization. In this optimistic scenario, policymakers across party lines reach a consensus on long-term fiscal reforms. Measures include moderate tax increases, spending cuts on non-essential programs, and structural reforms to entitlement programs like Social Security and Medicare. Coupled with steady economic growth and controlled inflation, these measures could stabilize the debt-to-GDP ratio over time, restoring investor confidence in US financial sustainability. Scenario 2. Prolonged political gridlock and economic stagnation. In this scenario, continued political polarization prevents meaningful fiscal reforms. Repeated debt ceiling crises and government shutdowns shake investor confidence, leading to higher borrowing costs and credit rating downgrades. Economic stagnation, driven by uncertainty and lack of investment, compounds the debt issue, pushing the US closer to a fiscal crisis. Scenario 3. Inflationary debt reduction. The Federal Reserve could resort to sustained higher inflation to erode the real value of the national debt. While this might temporarily ease debt burdens, it would also reduce the purchasing power of citizens, increase living costs, and weaken trust in the US dollar. Global markets might respond by diversifying away from dollar assets, exacerbating financial instability. Scenario 4. Default on debt payments. In a worst-case scenario, political or economic turmoil could prevent the US from meeting its debt obligations, leading to an unprecedented default. This outcome would trigger a financial crisis, collapse global markets, and severely damage the dollar's status as the world's reserve currency. The ripple effects would be catastrophic for both the US and the global economy. Scenario 5, strong economic growth outpaces debt growth. A more optimistic outlook envisions rapid technological advancements, robust productivity growth, and successful infrastructure investments driving economic expansion. If GDP growth consistently outpaces debt accumulation, the debt-to-GDP ratio could stabilize or decline organically without significant tax hikes or spending cuts. Scenario 6, global shift away from the US dollar. Increasing global adoption of alternative reserve currencies, such as a potential BRICS-backed currency, could weaken demand for US Treasury bonds. Reduced foreign demand would force the US to offer higher interest rates on its debt, increasing borrowing costs and putting more pressure on federal budgets. Each of these scenarios carries unique risks and opportunities, and the actual outcome will depend on a combination of policy decisions, global economic trends, and domestic political dynamics. What lies ahead? Policy recommendations and economic strategies. Reforming tax policies. The US government could address revenue shortfalls by reforming the tax system. This might include raising taxes on high-income earners and large corporations, closing tax loopholes, and improving tax compliance to ensure everyone pays their fair share. However, such measures often face significant political resistance. 2. Spending cuts and budget reallocation. Reducing unnecessary spending across various sectors, including defense and administrative expenses, could help balance the budget. At the same time, prioritizing investments in sectors like healthcare, education, and infrastructure could foster long-term economic growth. 3. Entitlement program reforms. Programs like Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid account for a significant portion of federal spending. Adjusting benefits, raising eligibility ages, or finding more efficient ways to deliver these services could reduce the fiscal burden without harming vulnerable populations. 4. Promoting economic growth. Encouraging innovation, entrepreneurship, and investment in high-growth industries can increase GDP and, in turn, tax revenues. Policies that support small businesses, research and development, and technological advancements are crucial. 5. Debt ceiling reforms. Frequent political standoffs over raising the debt ceiling create unnecessary economic uncertainty. Implementing long-term agreements or automatic adjustments tied to economic indicators could reduce its risks. 6. Strengthening global trade partnerships. Expanding trade agreements with key allies and emerging markets can boost exports, attract foreign investments, and reduce reliance on domestic borrowing. 7. Monetary policy adjustments. The Federal Reserve plays a key role in managing inflation and interest rates. Coordinated fiscal and monetary policies are essential to avoid scenarios where rising interest payments overwhelm the federal budget. 8. Reducing dependency on foreign creditors. Diversifying the sources of government financing and encouraging domestic investment in treasury bonds can reduce reliance on foreign creditors like China and Japan. 9. Investing in human capital. Building a skilled and adaptable workforce through education, training programs, and healthcare investments will enhance productivity and competitiveness in the global economy. 10. Building public trust and transparency. Clear communication about debt management strategies, regular updates, and long-term fiscal plans can rebuild public and investor confidence in U.S. financial stability. These strategies require political will, bipartisan cooperation, and careful balancing of economic priorities to ensure sustainable debt management and long-term prosperity. What the U.S. could do to overcome the debt situation. Overcoming the U.S. debt crisis requires a multifaceted approach, combining technical, strategic, and political measures. Below are detailed explanations of key solutions. Technical solutions. Tax system overhaul. Implementing a progressive tax system that ensures higher income earners and large corporations contribute a fair share can help increase federal revenue. Addressing tax loopholes and enforcing stronger tax compliance are essential. 2. Spending efficiency audits. Regular audits of federal programs can identify wasteful spending. Cutting unnecessary expenditures and streamlining government operations can reduce fiscal pressure. 3. Debt restructuring. The U.S. could consider renegotiating the terms of its debt, including interest rates and repayment timelines, to make debt servicing more manageable. 4. Entitlement reform. Programs like Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid require adjustments to ensure long-term sustainability. Raising the retirement age, implementing income caps for benefits, and introducing cost control measures could help. Strategic solutions. 1. Boosting economic growth. Encouraging innovation, investing in emerging industries like green energy and technology, and supporting small businesses can increase GDP and generate higher tax revenues. 2. Strengthening trade agreements. Expanding trade partnerships and securing more favorable trade deals can increase exports and reduce the trade deficit. 3. Reducing dependency on foreign creditors. Encouraging domestic investment in government bonds and diversifying debt sources can reduce reliance on foreign creditors like China and Japan. 4. Targeted infrastructure investments. Investing in modern infrastructure can stimulate economic growth, create jobs, and boost long-term productivity. Political solutions. 1. Debt ceiling reform. Ending political standoffs over raising the debt ceiling by establishing automatic adjustments based on economic indicators can prevent unnecessary crises. 2. Bipartisan cooperation. Policymakers must work across party lines to develop sustainable fiscal policies, free from short-term political motivations. 3. Transparent fiscal communication. The government should openly communicate its debt management strategies to build public and investor confidence. Does the US have an action plan? While various administrations have proposed deficit reduction plans, these often face political gridlock. Existing initiatives focus on economic growth, tax reforms, and spending control, but consistent implementation remains a challenge. Ultimately, overcoming the debt crisis requires a balance between raising revenues, controlling spending, and fostering economic growth, all while navigating political complexities and maintaining global investor confidence. While the US remains a dominant force in the global economy, its increasing reliance on debt financing poses significant risks. The geopolitical and economic landscape is rapidly changing, with nations like China, India, and Russia challenging the traditional financial order. Without significant reforms and strategic adjustments, the question is not if the US will face a debt reckoning, but the US debt situation demands urgent attention and strategic reforms to ensure long-term financial stability. The world is watching closely, as the consequences of a US debt crisis would be felt far beyond its borders. Policymakers, economists, and global leaders must collaborate to address these challenges before the global economy reaches an irreversible tipping point. For citizens, understanding these dynamics is crucial for making informed decisions about investments, savings, and financial security. If you found this video eye-opening, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update on critical global issues. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think the US can escape this debt trap? Together, let's stay informed and prepared.